The Law of Money, Chapter 7. The Law of Self-Respect and Money. How money flows toward dignity, not desperation. Why self-respect precedes abundance. I once had a co-worker who worked harder than anyone I knew, yet money always seemed to slip through her fingers like water through cupped hands. She worked before dawn, went to bed after midnight, never complained, never say no. She was generous to a fault, loaning money she could not afford to lose, underpricing her work, apologizing for asking to be paid on time. When I asked her gently why she lived this way, she smiled with tired eyes and said, "I don't want to be a burden." That sentence stayed with me for years because buried inside it was a quiet truth of why money avoided her, not because she lacked talent, discipline, or kindness, but because she lacked respect for herself. And money, strange as it sounds, is drawn to dignity the way a compass needle is drawn to north. This chapter is not about arrogance or pride. It is about something far subtler than far more powerful self-respect, the kind that speaks softly but stands firmly, the kind that does not beg, chase, or shrink, the kind that money recognizes and moves toward naturally. Money has eyes even when we pretend it doesn't. People often say money doesn't care about feelings, but that is only half true. Money does not have emotions, but it responds to emotional posture of a person holding it or asking for it. Money moves toward clarity, confidence, and calm. It recoils from panic, shame, and desperation. Think about it. Have you ever felt uneasy lending money to someone who seemed frantic, pleading, or chaotic? Even if you wanted to help them? And have you ever felt surprisingly comfortable paying someone who carry themselves with quiet confidence, even if their price was higher? The reaction is not logical, it is energetic. Money is exchanged through people, and people are deeply sensitive to dignity. We trust those who respect themselves. We hesitate with those who do not. Self-respect creates a kind of invisible gravity. It says without words, "I know your worth. I am steady. I am not here to take from you. I am here to exchange fairly." Desperation, on the other hand, sends a different message. "I need you to save me." And while compassion may respond to that cry, abundance rarely does. The hidden cost of desperation. Desperation is not always loud. Sometimes it wears a costume of humility. Sometimes it hides behind phrases like this: "Anything is fine. Pay me whatever you think is fair. I'm just grateful for the opportunity. Sorry to bother you." There is nothing wrong with gratitude, but when gratitude is mixed with fear, fear of rejection, fear of being replaced, fear of being unwanted, it erodes self-respect. And when self-respect erodes, money begins to behave strangely. It comes in a small amounts. It arrives late. It leaves quickly, or it comes attached with resentment, obligation, and exhaustion. I have seen people who constantly undercharge, thinking they are being kind, but secretly feel bitter. That bitterness leaks into their work, their voice, their body language. Clients sense it, employers sense it, money sense it. Desperation distorts the relationship with money. It turns money into rescuer instead of partner. And money does not like being a rescuer. Why self-respect must come first? Abundance does not create self-respect. Self-respect creates abundance. This is a difficult truth for many people, especially those who grew up with scarcity. When you have lived in survival mode, it feels logical to think once I have money, I will finally respect myself. But life does not work that way. Money amplifies who you already are. If you do not respect yourself when you have little, having more will not magically fix it. It may even make it worse because now you lack of boundaries affects more people, more decision, more responsibility. Self-respect is not a reward you earn after success. It is the foundation you build before success can stand. It shows up in small, ordinary moments, judging a fair price without apologizing, saying no without over-explaining, waiting patiently instead of chasing anxiously, walking away from deals that feel demeaning, even if they promise quick cash. Each of these moments sends a signal to money. I'm not afraid, I'm not begging, I am alive. The alignment is magnetic. The quiet confidence that attracts wealth. There is a certain calm in people who respect themselves. They do not rush, they do not plead, they do not argue their worth. They make requests, not demands. They accept refusals without collapsing. They negotiate without hostility. This calm is not weakness, it is strength that does not need to announce itself. I remember the time I had to negotiate an offer for the real estate transaction that was clearly undervalued. I did not raise my voice. I did not threaten to leave. I simply say, this does not reflect the value I bring. If the budget cannot change, I understand, but I won't be the right fit. Then for that moment, I felt silent. The silence is shifted. The offer changed. Why? Because respect creates leverage, not manipulation, leverage. When you respect yourself enough to walk away, others feel it, and money follows the one who is not afraid to let it go. Dignity is not loud. Some people confuse self-respect with dominance. They think attracting money requires aggression, arrogance, or showing off. But that's not dignity. That is insecurity wearing armor. True dignity is quiet. It does not need to win every argument or prove superiority. It does not measure itself against others. It simply stands. Money recognizes that stillness. That is why you often see wealth flow toward people who appear almost indifferent to it, not careless, but unattached. They do not cling, they do not chase, they do not dramatize. They respect money, but they do not worship it. And money responds by staying. When you stop begging, life starts offering. There is a turning point in everyone's financial journey, a moment when they stop begging life and start meeting it as an equal. Begging does not always look like asking for handouts. Sometimes it looks like staying in humiliating jobs because at least it pays. Accepting unfair treatment because I need the money. Silencing your voice because I can't afford to upset anyone. Each of these choices whisper to money, I don't trust myself, and money listens. But the moment you choose dignity, even if it costs you in a short term, something shifts. Opportunities begin to appear differently. People respond with more respect. Doors open that were previously invisible. Not because the world suddenly became kind, but because you changed how you stand in it. The inner agreement with yourself at the core of the law of respect and money is an inner agreement, an agreement that says, I will not trade my dignity for cash. I will not shrink from being accepted. I will not abandon myself for money. This agreement is not loud. You do not announce it, you live it. And life, in its mysterious way, begins to honor it. Money flows toward those who honor themselves because money is a form of trust, and trust requires respect. The paradox of letting go. One of the strangest truths about money is this: the more desperately you need it, the harder it is to receive. And the more you trust yourself without it, the more easily it comes. This is not because money is cruel. It is because desperation collapses your posture. It bends your spine inward. It makes your voice tremble. Self-respect strengthens you. When you stop begging, you start choosing. When you start choosing, money begins to choose you. Respect is felt before it is seen. You can dress well, speak eloquently, and still repel money if you do not respect yourself internally. People sense it in the subtle ways. How quickly you discount yourself. How often do you apologize? How do you react to delays or rejection? Whether you rush to please or remain centered. Money follows the one who is centered, not cold, not detached, centered. Teaching money how to treat you, even interaction with money teaches it how to behave in your life. If you accept being underpaid, money learns that you tolerate disrespect. If you overspend to impress, money learns that you confuse worth with appearance. If you give from guilt, money learns that it is tied to shame. But when you handle money with dignity, earning it honestly, spending it consciously, giving it freely without self-betrayal, money learns a different lesson. It learns to stay. The final truth, money does not flow toward desperation because desperation is unstable. It flows toward dignity because dignity is safe. Self-respect is not about having more, it is about being more grounded in who you are before the money arrives. And when that grounding is real, money has a way of fighting you, not because you chase it, but because you finally stood still enough for it to catch up. That is the law of respect and money. Not flashy, not dramatic, but unbreakable. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy and digest it in. Click the button to subscribe to continue on to chapter 8.